Hello, people. 1 hour later, 1 hour better. Typically a more Seattle Overload podcast time where it's 10 p.m. for me. So, how about that? Guys, we actually have a loaded show. We've got Seahawks. I mean, it's not a mock game, but it happened at Lumen Field, hence Lumen on the whiteboard. And yeah, we've got training camp stuff. We've got some rash reactions. We've got Geno Smith latest news. We've got all types of things to talk about. But Griff, before that, the preamble.
Right. Man, lots going on in the world. But
Isn't it?
We were talking
Congratulations. Your country has produced the fastest 100-meter sprinter once again.
Nice.
I watched it about half an hour ago.
That's not usually our thing.
No.
We're infamously like second and third best at sprinting.
Mm-hmm. And then disqualified later on for
right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting.
Honestly, watching the Olympics, I used to love the Olympics, but now I am really cynical. It's ruined it for me.
Yeah. I guess France is doing really well. I didn't know.
Yeah, what's up with that? Why is it that whenever a country hosts an Olympics, they're suddenly amazing?
Oh, I didn't even make that connection, but because France usually isn't. They're usually not in the top 3 overall, right?
Correct.
They're usually like in the 5 to 8 range, from what I remember. But yeah, that is interesting. I mean, maybe home field advantage. They don't have to travel their regular training environments, right?
Yeah, maybe there's some more. Well, actually, no, I can't say that. I can't say that. It's going to imply something about more leniency in certain areas, perhaps.
Is that your English pride?
Well, no. But one amusing thing was, and this is definitely a home field advantage, if you like. One of their, I think it was a kayak guy. He usually he usually kayaks at home, and it just so happened the course was literally like outside his house, and it was the one he did every day, so he knew it like by heart.
Yeah, interesting.
So I guess there is a bit of home field advantage.
That makes sense.
For certain sports.
Simone Biles is just insane. Biles and Ledecky.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool.
Like, they're so far ahead of the competition. It's like inconceivable. It's cool. And then what else? Okay, so what's the rundown on Olympic soccer, on Olympic footy? Because no one, the world doesn't really care about Olympic soccer like that, right?
I don't care about it. I think the idea, this is very much misunderstanding it. I think the idea is that it's more because there's like the World Cup and the Euros, or if you're in a different country like the Copa America or whatever. I think the idea is more that the Olympics isn't the most prestigious of soccer tournaments. Right. So rather than making it like equally prestigious, when the chances are like in the same Olympic year you're going to be playing Copa America or European Championships, so you're not going to probably be able to do both, make it an opportunity for countries to develop their young players while also having some like veteran stalwarts like show them the ropes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Makes sense.
And I think various countries have like age doped to to try and win.
Yeah. Now, Olympic basketball is fun though.
Yes.
That's cool.
Well, not right now. It's not cool right now because the US men's team hasn't fallen apart yet.
Yeah, and what's fun though about it is obviously when you put together the US Olympics team, you're taking just like the best 1s and 2s from NBA squads. And right. So everyone on the roster is a number 1 or number 2 or worse.
Yeah.
And so they have to learn how to work together and play off.
Someone has to be a number 5.
Right. Someone has to be a role player. And it's fun watching them work through that and then play against the really well organized teams.
Right, like Spain, I think, are pretty highly thought of because they just have this chemistry and they know how to play together, and there's slightly different rules and the goaltending rules, the three in the paint rule, all that type of stuff.
So yeah, it's fun watching the U.S. team kind of have to figure out international play on the fly, but they do it though. I mean, credit to them.
Because these a lot of the European guys grew up playing this version of basketball, which is pretty different, and the US guys have never ever played it, or they've played it like once, and they're like, "What is this?" This is
or they play on teams where that is a huge prominent thing, but they're the number one, so they don't need to play. They have other role players playing it. So it's still really fascinating. I think it's funny that like the U.S. men's team is really relying on the fast break and stuff, and just no one has international play. They have no answer for it just because they don't have the speed and length for it. They just don't. But the half court stuff is fun. But I think it's funny where occasionally there will be a quarter where LeBron still pushing 40 is just going to be like, I'm just going to hip check my way to the paint.
Yeah.
And it's just like no one in the league can defend that.
Well, I liked how after South Sudan almost upset them, when they actually played in the Olympics, the US just was like, we're going to play full court press for like an entire half. And that's that.
South Sudan is another example of like a really well organized team, right? That just Kevin Durant is like the best player to add to a team. What am I saying? If you already have an established 1-2, he's the best player that could be the number 3 on the planet. Whereas if you had an established 1-2 and made LeBron the third most important player, it wouldn't be as good. If you made Durant the third most important player, even though he's capable of being the first or second, his skill set is the most unguardable when you've got other problems to worry about. He's like if the 1-2 is the anvil, he's the hammer type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
He's like the schematic hammer, like the most unstoppable schematic hammer I think basketball will ever see. It's the same thing when he joined Golden State. It's when you've got, obviously he was more important than Clay, but the way they used him, how he worked off ball and everything was just unstoppable. Anyway, Matty, this is an American football podcast, so how about you shape up and hit it?
Welcome to the Shadow Overload podcast, where Griffin and I are going to recap the Seahawks mock game, except it wasn't a mock game, it's just a practice at Lumen Field. We'll dive into why it's no longer a mock game. We also have comments from Mike Macdonald. But first, the Seahawks franchise quarterback. And when I tweeted out that he was injured, people were like, franchise quarterback, ha ha ha, ha ha ha. Geno Smith's not a franchise quarterback. But anyway, he was injured. He still is currently injured. He missed the activities at Lumen Field. He had a hip and a knee issue where Mike Macdonald described he got banged up a little bit in the Tuesday practice. Now, this happened to Geno in terms of getting banged up in a practice previously on a bootleg type play last season where he did end up missing some time, actual regular season time. But this sounded a bit more serious when Mike Macdonald, and we're still learning his parlance for injuries, mentioned he was having to have imaging done on the injury. However, after the mock game, Macdonald spoke a bit more encouragingly on Geno Smith's status. He said, I think he's good. We're still going through that process, but looks optimistic. And then when asked if Geno Smith will be back next week, the Seahawks head coach responded, I think there's a good chance we'll see him next week. I believe there's another test today. Griff, before we talk about Sam Howell and PJ Walker and what they were able to show at Lumen Field, or perhaps not show, how scared were you? What was the panic scale heading into this?
I was, actually, I was expertly ignoring it. I blocked it out.
Ostrich in the sand type thing?
Exactly. I saw the tweets, I read the articles, and, I just pretended like it wasn't real.
Yeah.
And this scenario paid off because it sounds like all is well.
Right. No, this serves me right, though, because at the start of the day, I think I tweeted something like, we've reached the stage of stupid, overreactionary Seattle Seahawks tweets, that part of the off-season. And then
Yeah.
by the end of the day, I was essentially melting down, saying PJ Walker would be starting week 1, and it was all over.
Yeah. Well, I want to be clear. I hear you on that. I want to be clear, though. Like, I wasn't coping. I wasn't saying, oh, it'll probably be fine.
No, you wouldn't cope.
It was complete denial. So I zagged instead of zigged. I pretended like the tweets weren't real. I pretended like the articles weren't real. And I came through the other side of it. So here we are.
Huh. Well done. That's
always keep that mindset in your back pocket, because sometimes it comes in handy.
Fantastic. So turns out Geno is probably going to be okay. It got even weirder when he tweeted out, like, on his story, posted the image of Pete Carroll, which was like, oh, is it over? And I just think, there could be many reasons that happened. Again, we've reached the stage of the off-season where we're overanalyzing a quarterback's Instagram story. But from a Geno perspective, I'm glad that, he doesn't have that much security on his contract this year. His earning potential has not been satisfied. Like, he could, if he has a good season this year, he's going to be paid $40 million plus a year. He's betting on himself again to try and get that opportunity, and for him to get hurt in camp to the point where he was missing significant time would be just brutal, and not really how the script writers should write a story in which you've seen him revive his career so far in Seattle, in the Pacific Northwest, after a shaky start in the NFL. So good news for the 33-year-old. But Griff, that did mean, as I alluded to, Sam Howell, who the Seahawks gave up 2 picks for, and PJ Walker were deucing it out for the honors of QB1, or the new QB1 in Seattle, albeit for a brief moment. And Howell is ahead of Walker in terms of his honor of playing with the first team. He took reps with the number 1 offense. Now, Mookie Alexander Field Goals wrote that he was running from clean pockets and essentially trying to extend for extension's sake in a great recap article Mookie put up at Field Goals. Macdonald described how he basically just mentioned, you feel the competitor with Sam. I think that's a big reason why he's here. We believe in his competitive spirit, his toughness. The best of Sam, I believe, is not going to show in a setting like this because you can't touch him. But this guy's been through it, and for him to just come out unscathed, I have a lot of respect for him on that. It's that is the most that you can say on a guy after you've had weeks of practice and you've seen him at Lumen Field it wasn't a mock game, but it was essentially lots of different game scenarios, situational stuff. And also the offense went 15 minutes without getting a first down in that period.
Yeah, it sounded like it wasn't a great showing for the corners or from the quarterbacks. I don't know what we're expecting from Sam Howell at this point. Like Coach said, it's not the best setting for him. At the same time, I would think he would try to take advantage of kind of a more relaxed setting where you're playing against players and stuff, to try to take more chances. I don't like that he I don't like that he takes off a lot. I mean, just throw it. Just rip it, man. But also, why is he taking off? Is he taking off because he's missing an open guy, or does he see an open guy and he just isn't processing quick enough and firing quick enough? I don't know.
Yeah, we'll get to this, but it did look as though the D-line was kicking butt against the Seahawks O-line. I think that's part of it, but also how looked hesitant. And the player we saw at Washington a lot of the time was a guy who was often, trying to make a bigger play than what was actually there, running out of the pocket. Occasionally it would work, but a lot of the time it was like a Russell Wilson bad tribute act. It was not great. And there's a lot of talk about accuracy issues, throwing to the outside from beat reporters, attending fans. Maybe that's his footwork disintegrating, as we spoke about in our previous podcast. perhaps is trying to throw these kind of off-platform late throws where that's suddenly going to get very hard to be accurate to the outside. Also, PJ Walker, he is a veteran himself. He's played more football than Sam Howell at a higher level. Just about. It depends how you view the XFL as well. But it sounds like Walker's ahead of Howell in terms of their execution, Griff. Although, I'd also read that if you're down to the Howell Walker type at quarterback, you're probably in some bother.
Yeah, it's not a good backup quarterback situation right now, anyway.
No. Right, so Griff, what stood out to you about this Lumen Field practice?
Well, we got a lot of recap articles. We also have our special Seattle Overload, boots on the ground, special forces, advanced reconnaissance, task force, etc.
Extensive.
Yeah.
And the drone as well.
And my rappelling down from the rafters, etc.
Yeah.
Shout out to all, you know who you are. We will not implicate you. But thank you. Do we want to? So what I'm saying is we actually did get some clips from the kind of more in-depth scrimmage, not quite a mock game, but more thorough scrimmage than regular. Do we want to start on offense or defense?
Well, I think just a general point. This is an entirely new coaching staff. There's a lot of new players. It looked to me like a team that is, and I don't want to overreact to what is essentially, you're missing your starting quarterback, as we've just described, so things are going to look tough. You're missing your starting right tackle, so things are going to look a bit shaky in that respect. Tyler Lockett's not really practicing, so, again, you're missing arguably your best receiver. Significant players missing as well. And I don't want to overreact. However, it did look like a team who is being coached right now by a staff who have never coached together before. It looked like they're going through a lot. And to that point, Mike Macdonald said this experience of going to Lumen Field was about going through the operation of what it's like to go there, get ready to go and play a football game. That's the first thing, especially for the guys that haven't been around, myself included. And then just seeing it in a different atmosphere. So kind of put a bow on the week, close it out in style, but also put them in situations where we'll see how they react. And then coaching-wise, go through our operation. We're in the process right now of debriefing on what we thought we could improve on, what we did well. And he later mentioned how they're kind of working out their chemistry together. And I think that showed up. It's only natural that would show up. And it's better it shows up now than in a preseason game or even a regular season game. That's why they did the process. So I guess good job. At the same time, offense, defense, special teams. I didn't see much of the special teams, but offense and defense, by all accounts, it was shaky. It was a bit shaky, and I don't know how much good football was being played. And should also say last season mock game is kind of bad football. They're working things through. It's not necessarily an issue unique to Macdonald.
Yeah, these are unavoidable growing pains. I don't know how else you could. I don't know how else you could avoid it. Like you said, the coaching staff has not worked together before. No one on the defensive side except for Partridge, the outside linebackers coach, Macdonald. They cross-pollinated at Michigan a few years ago. Carl Scott has some incumbency. Well, he hasn't worked with these guys, but he was there last year, so that's good with the players and everything. But beyond that, it's brand new. It is brand new. So the coaches are learning each other. They're learning the players. There's a lot of positives to that because there's like zero baggage, right? You're forging something new and like something really cool can arise from that. But there will also be hurdles and obstacles along the way. So there's that side of it. Then on the offensive side of the ball, I think it's good that the O-line coach and the OC have worked together for a long time. That's great. They're the backbone of everything. But then you've also got like all the position coaches are brand spanking new with each other and they don't know each other. So
Jay Amth, apologies if I've butchered your name there. From someone who's visiting an NFL stadium for the first time, this looked more like UW's spring game than an NFL team. I mean, that's pretty cutting. Appreciate your comment. Thank you. And please let me know if I've messed your name up. Yeah, I mean, that's... I hope you enjoyed Lumen Field, given it was your first time there. But that is a very interesting perspective, and that kind of aligns with what we've seen and heard as well.
It's not who was out there, at least in the 15, 20 clips that we had on defense with the backup linebackers and the safety. And the safety group isn't fast to begin with, but it was not a fast unit out there. They're slow. And I think that doesn't mean that they're bad per se, but it's just, if you're characterizing a trait, it was a slow back seven. Obviously there's speed in Woolen and Witherspoon. But they're like Julian Love in a fast line is pretty fast, but like he's not very explosive out of a break type thing. Rayshawn Jenkins is a 4.65 guy. And he, at this point in his career, is still a solid player, but that's how he moves. So especially when the scheme is vanilla, which is what it was, for the sake of just trying to drill the fundamentals and the core principles before you sprinkle in all the razzle-dazzle stuff, the lack of speed is going to reveal itself even more. So like Patrick O'Connell, as we know, competent football player, he's a 4.8 guy. And that shows up that he's a 4.8 guy. Tyrell Dodson is not a fast linebacker. And we know that Baker is pretty speedy, but he wasn't out there because he's sidelined at the moment. Those are my characterizations. Also, well, I mean, if we want to go ahead.
Well, on the defense, looking a bit slow, we should also mention that, again, this is very basic scheme that's out there, and the kind of beauty, the strength, the standout trait of Macdonald's system is the way in which they disguise and, don't take plays off, but they're efficient in their coverage movements based on what they're getting, and they kind of delve into game plan specific stuff versus teams, and they, simulate pressure, so they're only rushing forward, but they're breaking pass pro stuff, and that all comes from honing in on an opponent as well. And they obviously weren't doing that in this practice. There was a bit of a disguise. Sure, they were showing a too high shell and they were rolling down, but not ramped up to week one level when you've got your full starters out there and you're dialed into your opponent. So,
right.
Yeah, they kind of maybe lack some speed in certain areas position-wise, but then you could say Baltimore did. I don't know how quick maybe some of their corners are.
That's a great point.
Safeties are. I guess Williams is kind of. I mean, he's not the quickest tester, but instincts-wise. Anyway.
I know. I think you've made a really good point. Baltimore is not that. They're not a fast defense individually. I mean, they're not slow. Like they're not slow, but Geno Stone is slow though. Marcus Williams is a great player, but he's like mildly above average speed.
Right.
He's not a burner. Kyle Hamilton in a straight line is slow. He is slow in a straight line. He is a top 10 defensive back in the league, though. Roquan Smith is fast for his density. He's a 4.5 flat guy at 236 pounds. Patrick Queen is a 4.5 guy at 230. So they move pretty fast. They're really agile in the short area. Who's their corner? Humphrey.
Marlon Humphrey, and then Brandon Stephen, he's listed as a free safety a lot of the time. He's been around. He's a real NFL scrapper vet, but when you're a scrapper vet, you're not really known for your speed typically. You're more kind of a smart, savvy dude who is technically sound and gets the mental sides of the game. Yeah. Now,
Humphrey is fast. He's not the fastest guy out there, but he's a 4.4 guy. So he's fast.
Yeah, but he's their number one, but like behind that.
Yeah.
I mean, Hamilton's not fast. Like Hamilton's just a really smart player. I mean, the ding on him, you remember when everyone was like, why would you take someone that high? Oh, that's a dodgy pick. He's so tall, he can't really move like an explosive, twitched up safety like we'd want. And then how wrong that proved, given
Right.
what else he brings.
So all that's to say is that Seattle not being extraordinarily fast across the board in the back seven, that alone won't sink them if they are to sink. I don't think they will sink. I'm just saying this doesn't have to be a negative thing. It's just it shows up when you're playing the brand of football they were playing, which is lineup and play level football. I think what is disappointing is that from what I saw, the hook curl and the flat zones were really rough, especially pushing on outbreaking things and leveraging outbreaking things.
Yeah.
That was really poor.
So Macdonald plays
especially for how much Grubb focuses that.
What do you mean by that?
How much Grubb emphasizes outbreaking offense.
Right, like he peppers that a lot.
Yeah, because he's outside the numbers, outside the hashes type of guy.
Yeah. AC, good to have you in the chat live. Good to see you again. Yeah, so before we talk about Grubb's offense, I guess, you're mentioning hook curl flat stuff, how they're pushing. I mean, that largely is a inside linebacker issue. And the inside linebackers, brief again, but it looked shaky. I don't want to dive too deep into the scheme because it might be in my interest not to do that, if you catch my drift. But this is common knowledge. Macdonald has two ways of playing cover three in terms of the fundamental techniques everyone's going to use. He has a spot drop style, where there is certain things where it will turn a bit more, it will alter the technique slightly. And then he has a lock style where they're matching both seams, and it often looks like cover one, but the two hooks are pushing with the three, basically. And whatever they were in, it looked bad. With a better quarterback, I think they'd have been sliced and diced. We've heard from various accounts how over-the-middle stuff's being completed a fair bit. Now, some of that, as you pointed out intelligently, Griff, is, if you're running certain concepts like sim pressures in 7-on-7 where you don't have the line, so you're not really pressuring the quarterback, and the guy coming at the quarterback's basically not even going to rush. He's just going to put his hand in the, he's just going to wave his hand and say, I'm not in the play, because they're just repping the coverage part of that. Then it's easier to pick apart the hole in the zone. But the linebacker situation overall is very concerning to me. Now, Jerome Baker missed the Lumen Field game. He had a little bit of a hammy, per Mike Macdonald. He said, we're working through that right now. I'm not sure how long it's going to be. He's been banged up for quite a bit of this offseason now. Came back and now he's out again. Now, Macdonald he praised Tyrese Knight's development. He said, when you're playing real football, he comes alive. He made some tackles there of the threes. So that was good to see. Then with inside backer situation, he's getting a lot of reps with some of the veterans. So I think that speaks at the learning curve a little bit. I mean, he's with the third string. So it's a long road for Tyrese Knight. And realistically, from a day three linebacker, you are not expecting them to come in and immediately set the world on fire, especially when he's coming from a level of comp, all respects to UTEP, and I quite like their orange jerseys with the dash of blue and the minor logo. But anyway, the pick. But besides from that, I mean, we watched some of his stuff, and you see how he's fitting the run and almost two-gapping on the second level, and it looks as though he's a fit for what Macdonald's asked the linebackers. But then there's so much rawness, and I mean, people who are in the live stream will remember how I reacted to the pick at the time. So ultimately, the issue is a depth one, but also a starting one, and Baker's out. June 30th, Macdonald mentioned how both Baker and Dodson were doing a good job, but it's a process. He also talked about their scheme flexibility again, which they wouldn't usually do, but we're starting to interchange them a little bit, which is something we haven't done as much. It's exciting to see where it unfolds right now, but we're in the build phase. Patrick O'Connell had a nice play in coverage, Griff, I guess.
Did he?
But
well, what play was that? I don't recall.
Well, it was mesh wheel. The back released, not mesh wheel. The back was on a shoot route. Basically like 4 strong. So the linebackers having to push out over like the mesh traffic and then get out into the flat and make the stop short of the goal line.
Okay, nice. We like that. See, with O'Connell, he knows what's happening. Like, he knows what's happening on the field. He knows what to do. He's just moving in slow motion. He comes from a long line of David Hawthorns.
Yeah.
Where.
And we spoke, right, about how Baltimore has a slower defense, maybe than you might think in terms of just team speed. But where they had speed was Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen.
Right. 4 or 5 guys with good short area.
And Roquan with decent play diagnosis, again adding to just how he can move quicker around the field. So,
yeah. And then, I mean, do you want to talk run defense as well? Because that was what was more concerning to me. And again, we're talking about backups. We need to see what it's like with Dodson and Baker. Well, I'll just get right into it. So they have a new philosophy of run fitting now. They're what is ball fitting more instead of gap fitting. So gap fitting is more, if there are 7 gaps, you've got 7 gaps, you have 7 defenders. So 6 blockers, 7 gaps, 7 primary run fitters. So for every gap you have a defender, that means you are responsible for a gap. It doesn't matter where the back goes, where the ball carrier goes, you're playing your gap. Now they're down a gap. So you might have 3 open gaps in line of scrimmage, whether bubbles or not, it could be the edge or whatever, but you've got 2 second-level defenders responsible for it. So you're distributing 3 open gaps to 2 guys. So because of that, you have to play more conservatively. You have to play more laterally, horizontally. You don't get the gap charge as much unless it's like really strong, like hard flow one direction, like a toss play or outside zone, right? Otherwise, when that ball is coming downhill, you have to be able to what is called stack, track, and fall back. And what the few examples of the under center runs or like the shotgun inside zone runs that we saw, it's like they were. I mean, the level of cohesion between the defensive line and the second level is really poor. You got 2 guys in the same gap, or they're not falling back in time.
Right.
It's a system that Baker sort of played because he did the Fangio system where they scheme gapped out, but still have them play kind of like a hybrid technique where it's like lateral and vertical sometimes not. It's not as clear cut. And Baker was okay at it. Dodson was a good run defender, but he played in a predominantly gapped out system where he's getting vertical. So he's an aggressive vertical downhill run defender, sometimes at the expense of play action. I don't think in this scheme, though, I think there will be a learning curve for him. I mean, he's good with contact. It's a huge part of being able to fall back is to stack and shed a climbing blocker, but he wants to diagnose and get going. And I don't know. We'll have to see how that goes. And I want to emphasize this even more because as good as Baltimore was last year, they struggled with some of this. They were not a dominant run defense. They were an average run defense team over the course of the whole season. And again, the second half of the season, they had like bottom 5 run defense. And as you unpacked in your article, a lot of that was sourced to gap scheme and stuff. So them not having an answer for counter and power with their and put pin pull sweeps and all that with their base stuff. So I think there's no reason to overreact to 15 clips from a mock scrimmage, but preseason will be a little more telling, just with how they work with like the rules, seeing how they function with the run fit mechanic, with more of an emphasis on process over result. But yeah, it's. If we were to glean anything defensively, it kind of tells us what you would already think. It's not a great linebacker group, first string to second string.
No.
And the safeties aren't fast, but they can be quality safeties, but they're not fast safeties.
Yeah. Finishing up with the back end, Mike Jackson's been dealing with an injury. I don't think we know exactly what it is. Rick Woolen mentioned how his off coverage games got better. That's where he believes his games got stronger. He spoke about that August 2nd. He goes, I know that I'm a great press corner, but it's a difference when you can play all two and you can change the game up. That's something I feel like I got better at. Even at practice each day, I've been working it. And certain days I've been doing some days where I'm off and some days where I'm pressed up. And then also the fact that he's training his muscle memory to work on the left side. Also, Leslie Frazier in a previous off-season appearance with Move the Sticks mentioned how Woolen could be that type of corner who travels. So they're going to mix around the matchups. But Griff, you had a tweet about Woolen this week.
Yeah, Woolen mentioned how he's moving around more. Leslie Frazier mentioned how they'll move him around more. So obviously that makes sense for cover one, right? You want to follow guys and select those matchups and let the defense dictate the matchups instead of the offense. I am curious what that looks like when they show man and then fall off into zone, which Macdonald does a lot. I am curious how Woolen handles that, especially because he's having trouble with pure zone eyes just at right corner, which he's played for 2 seasons now. How will he handle that flipping sides? Because you'd like to see him get a handle on it at one spot before branching out even more. But at the same time, moving him around more takes advantage of his truly elite one-on-one ability, which you can get one-on-one stuff not just in man coverage. You can also get that in some zone calls because depending on the route concept, it's effectively plays out like man coverage on the outside. So I don't know. What do you think about that, though?
Yeah, I'm down with it. I think you can do the same with Witherspoon, depending. If I don't think you want to move him around as much just because of how good he is in the slot, and like Woolen in the slot, unless he's up against the kind of X body type. Even then, though, I just don't think that's the way to move him around. I think he still needs to be on the perimeter more. But Spoon, in theory, if you had another guy who's good in the slot, you like the matchup there, you could move him anywhere on the field. And I was so impressed at this mock game, Spoon's ability just to stay on top of guys in press, play 2-to-1 to numb the hands, really good. And Rayshon Jenkins said August 2nd, kind of like me on this show, asked about what impresses him about Spoon. He said, I feel like the top of the route. When receivers get into the top of their route, he's very sticky at the top. He doesn't really allow too much separation. And he isn't the biggest, but he acts like he is when he's out there. So that's what impressed me the most about him. He's so good at staying square and top down on stuff and not opening too quick and just denying each phase of the route. So that's exciting. And year 2 should only be better because he has those instincts that Pete Carroll said reminded him of Troy Polamalu as soon as they drafted him. He has a feel for the game. And... yeah. That showed up at Lumen.
Highest compliment Pete can probably give a player is natural feel, and then comparing them to Troy Polamalu.
And then them playing really damn good football. And somehow, that's some news for the show, somehow not being in the NFL top 100, which is always a rather amusing list, but the fact that Devon Witherspoon missed out is comedy. Julian Love of the Seahawks made it at 95, the Seahawks safety. DK Metcalf made it also. And then the third and final Seahawks player to make it was... Griff, can you help me out here? Or do I need to go through the list?
It was Woolen, DK, and...
it was Reek Woolen. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say Devon Witherspoon's more deserving of any of those players. So. Speaks to the talent on Seattle's roster and the potential of this roster and the ambitions that ownership will have of this current team, along with the coaching staff and front office. Other final thing on the DBs is DJ James kind of got picked on today, and a comment made August 1st by Mike Macdonald stood out to me where after James got his first pick, Macdonald described how they were laughing the other day because... someday he's going to look back on his career and tell his kids, hey, let me tell you about my first NFL training camp. You'll never believe it. There's some things that have gone on. Then McDonald said how he needed a break, so it's good. sounds like it's been kind of rough for him, which I guess when you're a shorter, smaller corner and you're in a clear one-on-one, guys are going to throw at you, and how you respond is what matters. I think he responded okay in the mock game as well. It's just it's going to be tough for him.
Mm-hmm.
He's scrappy, though. He was scrappy in college. All right, more positive stuff, Griff. The D-line. So the D-line is clearly the strength of this defense. They've got significant investment there, both financial but also draft assets put into that position via trade as well. Where do you want to start with the D-line? I guess Byron Murphy, Griff, is a really exciting type of player, and he looked about as good as you could in this setting.
Yeah, I like how Macdonald said he is what they thought he was, just as advertised. Squatty, explosive, high strength to weight ratio. I'm sure that's showing up run and pass.
Yeah.
He has a great anchor for his size. You know, he can get into the backfield again, run and pass. So that's really exciting. I am really curious to see. My biggest thing that I'm interested in on the interior is what the snap breakdown looks like at who's playing nose and who's playing through technique the most, especially in nickel. I'm curious about that. Yeah, Mike Morris too.
Well, Griff, funny you should say that, because a little birdie told me that Leonard Williams was playing outside offensive tackles. So I asked Mike Dugar of The Athletic, friend of the show, Mike Sean Dugar, is Leonard Williams playing outside tackles in 4-down stuff or just base? And Mike Sean Dugar responded, right now, without seeing replays or anything, I think just 4-down fronts. So Leonard Williams is playing D-end in the nickel 4-down stuff, which, if avid listeners of the show and readers of SeahawksOnTape.com will recall, that is what Brent Urban, 6'7", 310 plus pounds. I don't think he's that heavy. He's 300 plus pounds. Brent Urban did for Mike Macdonald's defense in Baltimore. Essentially, whenever they were getting run on in nickel or facing a team who could run the ball, early downs, Brent Urban would play one of the den spots rather than Kyle Van Noy. So you'd have Van Noy off the field. You'd have Clowney on one side, who is a disruptive, active edge defender. You could say like an Uchenna Nwosu, but maybe when Seattle needs a bit more bulk, they play. It looks like they're experimenting with playing Williams outside, which, to Griff's point about how the snaps are going to break down, that would create an opportunity for Byron Murphy to play the 3 technique on the interior. Urban also came in to play in base a bit as well on tight ends. Maybe if they're having C-gap issues, which again, gap run scheme, base stuff, 49ers are going to try and do it. Stick Leonard Williams there rather than Draymond Jones, who, by the way, is still out injured, which has a whole separate issue. But Leonard Williams there, where he's technically playing like an end, that could be the solution.
What if when they want a bigger presence, what if they just straight up prefer Leo out there over Draymond Jones as the season unfolds and he continues to eat in? Jones continues to get his snap count eaten into, and then also the knock-on effect of that is you get more reps out of Murphy on the inside, and say he has they're like, we got to get him on the field more. It feels more and more like Jones is the odd man out here. And
remember that comment from Adam Dirty early in the offseason about, we still need to work out basically where Jones fits in. Yeah,
it felt less like, oh yeah, the more you can do, and more like, what can you do?
I don't know what to do with this guy.
Yeah. And like, again, Jones is I'm not saying he's a bad player. I think he's above average. He's just not as good as you want him to be, I think.
Yeah, ultimately, is he a better every down 3 technique than than Leonard Williams? No. Is he a better in base? Is he a better D end than Jaron Reed or even Leonard Williams? Like, no. Right. So is he an outside linebacker like he was last season to end the year when they acquired Leonard Williams and they were trying to get bulkier on the edge to negate some of the drop-off they experienced when Uchenna Nwosu went down as well and get a bigger, stouter edge defender? Similar line of thinking to what Macdonald was doing with with Urban playing on the edge in nickel, but oh no, he's not better than Leonard Williams now for doing that. So how do we get this guy snaps? Because it's all well and good saying, oh fine, he's a guy you rotate in on the interior as a pass rusher, but again, is he a better interior pass rusher than Byron Murphy, Leonard Williams, Jaron Reed, a linebacker mugged up in there?
You know how you get Draymond Jones more snaps? It's by trading him to the New York Jets, where there's more snaps for him to play.
But what would you trade for? Like, do they have a linebacker or something?
You might just say that they have Quincy Williams. Quincy, come on over. Or, hey, CJ Mosley, spend your twilight years in Seattle, reunite with your old Baltimore linebacker coach. It would be good for both sides, I think.
Sick.
To your point, though, like, honestly, Leonard Williams, so 4-down nickel, right? Leonard Williams to the close side, to the tight end side, to the heavy side. A combination of Byron Murphy, Jaron Reed, and Hankins rotating inside, and then Nwosu on the open side. That might be the antidote to Kyle Shanahan gap scheme against nickel fronts. And then you work in the slot blitzes, reorient the attacking mode of your defense away from the pass and toward the run to get numbers against the run when you need it. That might be the solution. I'm really curious to see what Macdonald does out of their 4-down stuff. You've got all this D-line talent, so many different types of skill sets to use them. I mean, if you told Mike Macdonald last year, hey, if you could swap out Brent Urban for Leonard Williams, would you do that? He'd be like, oh my God. He'd be chomping at the bit. So, I mean, he's got to look at his D-line personnel and be like, this is the best D-line group I've worked with. And I think that's true. Again, Baltimore was good last year up front. I just think Seattle's better. The obvious caveat is Seattle is way worse at linebacker and safety, and that matters because the safeties come up and help play the run too than Baltimore was. So trade-offs, but you have to wield the best part of your group to the fullest extent to help compensate for weaker areas, and that's the D-line. That's the strongest group. So use it.
And I should say one real positive from this was the outside linebackers who we spoke about coaching chemistry, and you reminded me of this off air, Griff. But Chris Partridge is the one guy. Well, I say the one guy. There's 3 guys who've coached with Macdonald before, or maybe Partridge never did. I'm completely messing this up. Partridge coached in the Michigan system, which Macdonald had installed under Jesse Minter. So there's some familiarity there. There's also Leslie Frazier, obviously, and then there's a guy I'm blanking on who played linebacker for Macdonald and is now an assistant linebackers coach. Anyway, point being, the outside linebackers looked really good. Boye Mafe, man, he could be having a damn good season. He could be staking his claim to be the best outside linebacker on the team.
Yeah.
The way he was jacking up tight ends, and this system essentially is going to ask when they're in the nickel 4-down stuff. But always, the outside linebacker in the system, for the vast majority of snaps, is the edge-setting player. If the run goes away, they need to win the edge for the kind of counter, bootleg, reverse stuff. If the run is towards them, they need to jack the heck up out of the guy in front of them and set the edge, make the ball cut back up inside, force the runner to change direction, either bubble to the sideline, but more likely cut back up inside. And what really impressed me was how these linebackers were striking tight ends on run away and like kind of carving through that. They'd started off in the D gap, so the outermost gap, and they were smacking the tight end and running through the C gap and getting a tackle for loss on run away. That's the type of stuff which happens to the Seahawks so damn often.
Yeah.
Against, like, you think of 49ers. All the best defenses get that kind of... it's kind of cheating the math. It's just making a play on the backside of a run that, the best defenses do, where they play aggressive, they play hard, they play quick, and they make those tackles. And that's what Maffei was doing, and that's what Partridge's outside backers were doing.
You solve the schematic concessions made toward the run to the benefit of the pass. You solve those. You compensate for those concessions with talent and getting the talent in the right spots to do so. And the D-line can do that. The D-line can BS the whole primary, secondary thing to get your numbers back, to make being down a gap in the math, the run math not matter. Like Nwosu was helping do last year, and then they lost him. So again, like I'm so excited to see Leonard Williams and Nwosu work together, and that's before even getting to adding in Byron Murphy to the mix. It could be really dang exciting. There's a comment about Nathan says way worse Dodson Baker. That's a big step down. When I was saying worse, I was speaking relative to the current roster. I just think from a relative sense, yeah, linebacker is the weakest spot on the defensive roster. Is it worse than last year? I think I would also say yes. Just from my view, Dodson is essentially Wagner in that he's a 2-down run thumper. He's not a coverage guy. He's a vertical downhill player. They skin the cat a little differently therein because, I mean, Dodson does move a little bit better. Bobby's a little more explosive, a little bit more like downhill explosive, whereas Dodson is downhill explosive, but he moves laterally a little bit better. He's just not as downhill explosive as Bobby. He also doesn't diagnose as well as Bobby. Not that he's poor at that against the run, but then in coverage, I mean, he's not giving you anything, especially on the interior. Baker, there's a good version of Baker, then there's kind of a blah version of Baker. The good version of Baker is a solid player. He can give you some stuff in coverage. He's good against the run, especially if you keep him clean. It's just he's a downgrade in both areas relative to Brooks. Brooks is just simply much better than Baker at everything, including blitzing. So, but again, Baker's still a good player. Brooks at Mike, Baker at Will, that would have been very cool. That would have been – I would have be hyping this defense to unreal levels if Macdonald was coaching that linebacker duo. I mean, it'd be like a multiplier effect, but right, they don't have that right now. So that's why I keep talking about making a trade for a linebacker.
Jordan Brooks, by the way, who is the standout performer at the Miami Dolphins training camp per multiple Miami Dolphins beat reporters.
Very interesting. Ranting and raving I'm hearing about Jordan Brooks down in Miami.
Why would they do that?
Why would they rant and rave about him? Also, isn't it strange that Miami hired from the Baltimore tree? Their defensive coordinator was an assistant coach of Mike Macdonald last year. Don't they know that Brooks isn't a
Why would a Kyle Shanahan head coach pay Jordan Brooks?
Interesting, Matty.
That's so weird.
That makes it even more interesting.
What the hell?
All right.
Anyway, enough with that. Final nuggets I had on the defense, Griff, is Kayvon Wallace is the guy behind Rayshon Jenkins and Julian Love at safety, and Kobe Bryant still more working as a safety. So nothing surprising there. Just note that down for preseason football.
Jenkins did mention that he's played a little bit of nickel. Love has played a little bit of nickel. Jenkins has played a little bit of dime.
And why would that be, Griff?
Why would he do what?
Why would he play a bit of nickel?
Well, so as we know, like he likes the big nickel 3 safety stuff. But what was interesting to me is that there isn't one dedicated guy. Whereas in Baltimore, of their safety group, there was a dedicated guy who played nickel. Mm-hmm. It seems like Macdonald is like, hey, I don't have one guy that can just carry the spot, but I've got 3 guys that can maybe intermix, and they can be super versatile. Like who's going to roll down the line of scrimmage? What overhang is going to what seam are we capping? Who knows what's going to happen?
Right. And I think if you look at guys, if you go back and watch how the Ravens caused the Seahawks problems, they rolled out, as they did for a bit of the season, like a 3 high safety package. I think that's something we could see from Macdonald, where, as Griff was saying, each of the guys could do either, rather than being a bit more predictable. Like Hamilton was often the guy who was down when they were in nickel, but they can do a bit of everything. They're not good enough maybe to do it full time, but you can play into that by being unpredictable in who is doing what. Not that the Ravens were super predictable with Hamilton. Also, the other thing I was getting at, Griff, there when I asked you that question was, I guess this is rather than just the passing down, we can show 3 high guys and roll one of them down or whatever. I think also, if you're concerned about Spoon's ability to hold up on the inside against certain run looks, like how the Seahawks had planned to use Jamal Adams as the big nickel last season for when primarily they got 2 tight end, 12 personnel stuff, I think this season you are going to maybe see Macdonald play around with that to help out Spoon, where he's the lighter body. He impressively throws himself in against the run and tries his very best. However, there is a bit of a concern over how much you're putting on that frame in terms of run fit stuff.
Right. Right.
Right.
So on that note, though, I think the nickel will be even more involved in the run fit this year for Macdonald than it was last year because they see more tighter splits in the NFC West. So they're going to be called to action more, whereas AFC a little more true slot formations. The slot is aligned wider. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll see there. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had like an interesting discussion. It might be a subject we can explore on another day, but it was essentially, Griff, how the defense that they ran last year in Baltimore is not very well suited to the NFC West attacks, and how, I mean, we've touched on it before, I guess, but how they choose to evolve. Maybe that is with like more of a big nickel and then a corner style nickel thing, but also maybe they run nickel bear fronts. Maybe that could be a thing. Haven't seen that from Macdonald yet, but
Yeah.
maybe that's a thing. Just interested to see how they evolve. Like, just touching on that again.
Well, so he has a way of getting quote unquote bear spacing just by rolling up the mic to one of the bubbles, right? So
Right.
it's a B-gap bubble. Now all of a sudden you've got eagle spacing technically, but the point is you got both B-gaps are plugged. But he does that for pass scenarios to get
it's not a run thing.
To get 5-0 looks. It's possible that he could try to take that structure and adapt it to make it more run focused, where maybe you're not showing it pre-snap, but you're run blitzing that guy to get those looks and then rolling the coverage accordingly to offset for the guy that you're losing in the coverage math. And then like falling off one of the edges if it is a pass, and then it's like, okay, now we got 4 underneath spacing again, or whatever the case may be, 5 under if it's cover 2 or cover 6. I don't know. We'll see. I think the easiest thing is to just have a nickel bear package that you emphasize, like you said. That's just, I don't know why the league went away from that. I don't understand. It works. It's like a panacea in some ways. The weakness is your 4-man rush, but hey, just fire zone, send both edges enough to offset. If you're trying to be a cover 1 team anyway, then just play really tight match hot coverage behind a 5-man rush, play 3 deep, 3 under, and match the seams, and now you're effectively achieving the same.
To that.
I just don't get it, man. I don't get it.
Anyway, nor do I. So, Sean in the chat, anyone else concerned about the interior O-line? Well, let's talk O-line because, I mentioned how Howe was struggling, but then also he was under some pressure and he was creating some of that pressure for himself, but also, there was some interior stuff being an issue. We should mention that there is a positive when it comes to the entire offensive line, which is that ESPN's Jeremy Fowler reported that Abraham Lucas, the Seahawks right tackle, might need most of the preseason to recover from a knee issue that has him sidelined, but he should be good for the regular season. I mean, that's a positive. Oluwatimi, he's been getting the first team reps at center. He's been, I think, okay. He had a tricep issue which saw him miss August 1st practice, but I believe he returned for this mock game. Laumea and Jarrell, the 2 rookies, they are in the last string of offensive line guys, and Christian Haynes-Griff is still behind the starting Anthony Bradford, which at this stage probably expected. But, I mean, how do you feel about the offensive line with all those things I've just rattled off?
It's a little disappointing that Haynes isn't emerging at right guard. I've heard conflicting things about Bradford, that he's kind of holding on to RG1 spot, the first right guard, but at the same time, he's not doing well in protection. So maybe they just need a bigger body of work from Haynes before they start mixing him in more with the ones. Like they're probably putting a lot of stock into the real preseason games, right? As they should. I would like to see that resolve more. It sounds like Oluwatimi isn't blowing anyone away. I would like him to. I like I said before, like I think there's a real center there with him, but it may not be to the extent that we want. Regardless, even if he was, they should still try to bring Connor Williams in. Yeah, I don't know. What are your interior O-line thoughts?
Well, you mentioned Connor Williams. Jerry Fowler also said that the Seahawks have interest in signing him, but nothing is imminent. Imminent? Nothing's going to happen soon. He's recovering from that serious knee injury and still needs time. Oh, I know. It looked rough, Griff. It always tends to because they've only just got into pads and so much of this is chemistry. And we can lead this, I guess, into Ryan Grubb's offense as a whole and what little we can glean about it. But there's quite a lot of inside zone stuff, and that ties in with Charbonnet's comments about this being a downhill running attack. But it was a lot of inside stuff. And I guess you hope it comes together a bit more, but it didn't look great.
Yeah. Well, and also matchup advantage, like the D-lines should be winning, right?
It should be.
Good. It's a good D-line, so
it should be. And Macdonald mentioned how, where is it? I don't think we've found the final five right now on the O-line. He said that August 1st. I mean, they won't have done because this could look so different. Like right now, Bradford's starting at right guard, but it could very easily be Christian Haynes if he can overcome those protection things you mentioned, Griff. Lucas returning at right tackle suddenly, that creates. Not only does that kick George Fant, who is the right tackle, out, but it would create the opportunity for Fant maybe to work in at guard. He's played there before. Olu Oluwatimi's doing an okay job at center, but Nick Harris is a guy who. As Macdonald mentioned, he has familiarity with the offensive coaches. He played at UW. He's being able to execute the offense, and a lot of calls a centre has to make. Mm-hmm. You could also see if McLennan Curtis, because he's been getting work of the ones as a right tackle with Lucas out. If they feel he's earned a chance to battle back at guard where he has experience, maybe he does, because. By no means do I think Bradford has that locked up at right guard. It's going to be pretty intense. So they definitely haven't found the final five right now. But you also wouldn't expect them to, given all the the context of the O-line. I wouldn't be too concerned. To Sean's point about concern about the O-line, interior O-line, I wouldn't be that concerned. At the same time, you've heard it before, but Geno Smith was the 6th most pressured quarterback last season. Despite playing in a way that didn't encourage said pressure, third downs were a massive issue for this offense, largely because of protection issues.
Right.
And also third downs were long sometimes because of protection issues.
Where if the O-line were to improve this year, would we expect necessarily to be seeing signs of that at this point in the process?
No, particularly not with a new system.
Right. So
relax.
And it's all relative, right? We're looking for improvement. We're not looking for them to be outright good.
Sure.
So
what did you think of this new system that I just spoke about? Ryan Grubb's offense. First time we've seen it. What did it look like?
Well, I thought it was good to see some more under center. Again, I don't know the exact numbers and percentages, but it seemed like under center was a little more prevalent than it was at UW because
you didn't char that from the drone.
Yeah, I didn't chart that. But like the college game, a lot of college offenses don't use under center. So a lot of like what Grubb is to this point is him working with the realities of the league he's playing in. So translating that principle to the NFL means, well, he's going to take advantage of NFL realities, and you'd be remiss not to focus under center in the NFL, regardless of who you are, with the exception of like Mahomes and Josh Allen a little bit, because they just don't need it, right? So I think it's good that we saw a little more under center structure, because that means more under center play action and all that. The actual run plays, I mean, what did we see? We saw some outside zone. We saw
pin pull.
We saw inside zone. We saw some split zone.
Seems pretty diverse.
It was pretty diverse
for like a mock game.
Yeah, I think I saw one
Or mock
counterplay.
practice, sorry.
I think I saw one counterplay. So, yeah, just that all is well and good, right? In the pass game, it's kind of like, well, everything that you think of when you think of Grub. When it's your 5-step, 7-step, it's either just straight up a shot play, or it's a 3-level flood to the outside, outbreaking with the backside dig and a check down.
Yeah.
And it was just like different variations of that. And or when it wasn't 5-step and it was more kind of possession oriented 5-step or true quick game, so 3-step concepts, it was some like triangle and then some choice route on the backside. So that's what Grub is.
One thing which stood out to me, because, well, let me address that thing first. So I've been thinking on this. I think what above a lot of things, what Macdonald likes about Grub is, and I'm kind of working on this thing. I'm not fully fleshed out with this thought, but I think there are similarities in how Grub calls offense to how Macdonald calls defense, in that there's only a set amount of concepts, but they're dressed up in a kind of variety of ways. But also he's very much trying to dictate, this is what we're going to do and put you in a bind like this, which is very much what Macdonald does on defense. Does that make sense? Again, like I said, it needs to be fleshed out more.
No, I hear you on that. I mean, Macdonald, how he layers things in, like the efficiency of the install is really what is special. It's not, it's not the X and O's. It is the X and O's, but it's how he institutes it to his own players that makes it so flexible, and so cost effective. From like a time on task standpoint, you can get into another concept, a totally different concept, by only changing what one or two players need to do, and it doesn't affect the other guys as much. From like, okay, wait, what color are we in now? Like that's what made Coach Fast on Twitter had a thread on that. It's the stuff beneath the hood that makes it so holistic, I guess. I think translating what you're saying to Grub is that, like, Grub from a concept standpoint, he's not a conceptual diversity guy. He doesn't have a large breadth of play types.
No.
What makes him special is he has his core plays that he loves, but with endless wrinkles, way to dress it up, constraints, progressions off of those particular plays. But you still might bucket all of those into like, okay, well, it's 3-level flood, or okay, this is choice, or okay, this is, you know what I mean? It's like 10 different ways to call the same play, really.
Right, which is exactly what Macdonald does with his blitzes and his coverage stuff.
Yeah. We'll see if Grub needs to institute more different types of plays than the NFL. What he had working for him at UW was, again, his coaching, but he had excellent players that he coached well and got everything out of. He made a really talented unit even greater than the sum of its parts.
Right.
But he won't have the same talent advantages overall, predominantly because of the O-line on the Seahawks. So we'll see how he handles that part.
Yeah. So Nathan in the chat, if that's the Nathan, I think. Hi, Nathan. Hope you're doing well. Big Viking Nathan. Could be. Might not be. If not, welcome other Nathan. Or you could be a big Viking too. Anyway, formation and boundary stuff should be mitigated by the hashes. Well, it's funny you mention that, because one thing about it's such an overreaction, but there's one play where he puts 3 receivers into the short side, which obviously in the NFL, to Nathan's point, the short side in the NFL is less short than it is in college. The hashes are narrow together. And so Grub puts 3 receivers into that short side and the running back. They have a one-on-one to the wide side, which in college, you're like, is Romo Duns against some true freshman corner in a load of space, and we can throw that ball, and we got all the space. But the advantage is less in the NFL, both from a matchup perspective, as Griff alluded to, but also, as Nathan's pointing out, from a spacing perspective. And the corner just stays on top, and it's incomplete. And it just felt so collegey. And, you know, am I overreacting to one play? Yes. But to me, it kind of reminded me of, oh yeah, Grubb does have to adapt a bit from what was going on in college. He can't maybe lean on quite the same hits. And again, they probably just wanted to see Sam Howell throw a 50-50 fade ball to a guy and give them an opportunity to make the catch, but also get the defense tested in that manner. This is probably an overreaction, but it just reminded me of the hash thing. So
yeah, well, we're trying to milk all these secondhand reports.
this is for over-analysis. Yeah, this is what this was made for.
We're overloading, baby.
Absolutely. So, how about Griff on the finally on the grab offense before I go there. Multiple tight ends. So because Noah Fant's been paid so much money, Will Dissly and Colby Parkinson have gone. It's my not to overshare, but my job is snap counts are kind of relevant in it. And I was like, oh yeah, the Seahawks are an 11 personnel offense. But there was so many 2 tight end sets in this mock game. So many, like a shifting and like a certain Shane Waldron actually, but maybe Pharaoh Brown is going to be given the chance to prove it. Yeah, maybe AJ Barner beats him out and takes these snaps, but not every offense can be 11 personnel or 10 personnel for 100% of the snaps. And if they are, they have a damn good third receiver who can block. And I don't think Seattle has like a Cooper Kupp type who can condense down into a slot and block. Like DK Metcalf can't give you the route tree to be able to do that, even though he has the blocking ability, right?
Yeah. Bobo? He honestly
True. Hey, we're going to talk about Bobo.
He blocks his tail off, man.
We're going to talk about Bobo in a second. But before that, Griff, the multiple tight ends, did that surprise you? Or am I just being stupid because they have to have more multiple tight ends in the NFL?
Right. I have 2 thoughts about that.
Okay.
So Jackson Smith and Jigba was on Rich Eisen, I said, and Rich asked him, like, okay, what's like the biggest difference about going from year 1 to year 2? And remember, he's answering that question through his lens as the slot receiver. The first thing he says is, well, there's a lot more three receiver sets, more 11 personnel. So I think it's again, like you said, that's kind of what we all assumed. And then we kind of a player kind of confirming that. So I still believe that it's going to be, a 3 receiver, 11 personnel base team, like probably 70% 11. That said, yeah, we did see quite a bit of 12. I think the reason for that is more so they wanted those looks for the defense's sake, not for the offense, because of NFC West. You get a lot of 12, 21, a lot of shifting around. So I think that was for the defense's benefit, not necessarily an indicator of what the offense will be. So that's how I took that.
Yeah. Fair. Interesting to get your thoughts on that, though. So, Jake Bobo, Griff, he makes a catch in practice where, oh my gosh, fully extends, just ridiculous type of catch. One that I think we've almost become slightly desensitized to, given Tyler Lockett's ability tracking footballs like that, I suppose, making those diving catches. But to kind of put this catch into context for the audio listener, John Schneider, per McDonald, John Schneider said that might be an all-time top 5 VMAC catch. That is that's impressive.
The adjustment that he made for that one diving touchdown in the red zone in the mock scrimmage yesterday, and then he also had another diving one. I mean, the guy he's just incredibly skilled.
So that's the crazy thing, right? He went and did it again at Lumen Field.
Right. Yeah. He did it again. And what's funny is that the highlight plays are him winning in tight spaces plays on the ball, right? But his best trait is getting open on top of it, right? So more Bobo. Honestly, Lockett probably won't be on the team next year. Is Bobo just straight up the third receiver? Is he just he's right there? We don't need to go crazy.
Ahead of Lockett this year?
No. Lockett will be great this year probably, and then they move on from him.
Right.
Do they replace Lockett via Bobo in the long run? Is he the guy?
I mean, they need to find out. So Macdonald spoke on this June 30th. He said, I don't see him drop a lot of footballs. It seems like he comes down with a bunch of them, but I think he complements our receiving room well, and we're excited in the team's phase. I think he provides more than a normal receiver would provide in that phase too, and then it'll be fun to see how he fits in the receiver room and how that thing all shapes up because we got a lot of talent. Cody White's a guy who's impressing people. I think McDonald praised his physicality and special teams, but that's a wide receiver 5. Bobo is clear receiver 4. Don't think D. Eskridge has done much in camp so far in his kind of last chance saloon, other than he got in a fight with Marquise Blair. So great.
Good stuff.
Yeah, Bobo can do a bit of everything, and you know, because you look at the frame and you look at the slow 40, and you're like, he's a big possession type. You know, you chuck the ball to him on like a 10-yard curl. And, you know, in the preseason, maybe you throw a goal line fade, but realistically, you know, he's not going to do much for you. But, you know, watch the tape like last year. You tweeted it, Griff. He was open a lot of the time. Just Geno's looking the other way, but it's not stuff where zone defenders are visioning QB looking away and not covering him. Like, he is separating on guys trying to match up with him in the slot. He's open on the quick, intermediate, and even short routes, particularly. Like, give him a choice route. You know, give him a pivot route, give him a slant. He's going to get open on these kind of quick game, you know, move the chains type stuff too. He's very, very sudden. Like that catch, where he beat Lance Boykin for the first VMAC catch, where he extends out. He's sudden as hell. He gets the corner to stop his feet, and then suddenly just turns on the jets, and that's separation. And then he's making the touchdown. I bet he's a good basketball player. I really do.
Yep.
Like he can blow past someone.
Agreed. Yeah. On that note, they've got a lot of guys that can run the choice between Jackson, Fant, Bobo. DK already runs it, even though you wouldn't think that concept and him go hand in hand, but he's good at it. Tyler could, in theory. I just don't know why they didn't with him last year. And then Chenault can do that stuff too. So then they got Westover waiting in the wings. So they have a lot of options for that. Basically, that's cool in that when they go into empty or like a spread look, either side of the line is either side of the center. It could be the front side of the play, the back side of the play. There won't be a lot of tells for the defense because any one of them could run that choice right out of the slot, right?
Yeah.
So you could just flop the play. You could call the same play, but flop it, you know?
Is this the part of the podcast where we re-explain what a choice route is, or are we done with that part?
Can if you want.
I have to do it?
Okay. So it's usually on the back side of no. I'm totally blanking. Is it on the back side or the front side?
It depends.
It depends. It depends on how you read it out because sometimes quarterbacks cheat. Anyway.
It is backside, I think.
Okay. Yeah. So something you progress to. If the defender in the slot has inside leverage, you either try to work to cross face. If you can't, you break out. If they're head up, you try to win inside. If they're outside leverage, you try to break inside. If opportunity is there to work over the top of him and go vertical or bend a post, you can do that too.
So it's an option really or choice for the receiver, and it's usually around 6 yards catch, right?
Right.
Which, if you look at JSN's average depth of target at Ohio State, 2011. Wow, can you imagine? 2021, he's getting like 9 ADOT, which that's college stuff. But if you look at 2022, it dipped to like 5-ish because he was just basically their choice guy, and they had Marvin Harrison Jr. and another good guy. Was that can't have been Olave in 2022? Who was their other receiver, Griff? Was it Olave in 2022?
No, he was a rookie in 22.
Harrison,
JSN, and then the other guy, Enugba.
Yeah, maybe, but not a guy you want running the choice route.
It's front side. I don't know what I'm talking about. It's usually front side. You read that front side, and then there's usually like a stick return on the back side. Yeah, Mika Igbuka.
Not with Seattle.
I remember Geno reading choice first.
Okay, maybe.
Sometimes he would decide pre-snap that the triangle read on the backside is more. Yeah. So he would just speed it up.
And that is why, chat, we spent 5 minutes explaining it, because I didn't know what it was. Right. Anything else you want to talk about, Griff? There's championship belts, mystery drills.
Well, we should talk DK. DK is demolishing guys on press, even Devin Witherspoon. I'd love to see what his matchups look like with Rick Woolen right now.
Yo, man, they must be going at it. Yeah. So that's cool. Career year, maybe.
I mean, let's remember he was hurt. He was banged up last year. He played banged up. Banged up in the
People do forget that. And they stopped targeting him deep down the stretch for whatever reason. I think because Drew Lock came in, and then protection issues, but also getting doubled and also being banged up. Combination of everything.
Yep.
Anything else, Griff? Chat? Any questions? Sean asking, are you liking the vibe from Macdonald so far? On that point, Leonard Williams said August 1st how Macdonald has a very, like, almost military mindset. There's this joke where we always say, like, hoo-ah, when he says something. That's an army thing. I think the quote should be hoorah, no? I don't know US military. We're trying to create a new identity. He also mentioned how their styles are very different, him and Pete Carroll. He said, I think so far we went to a military base. We had the Blue Angels. You could tell Mike was really inspired by what we heard from those military people and kind of held on to certain things that they pointed out to our team. Some of the similarities that they have in the army and military and similarities through football, that crossover. He also mentioned how they have a motto called Make It Right, where, say, you jump off sides. He then described how you have to make it right by getting a sack or TFL on the next drive or that same drive. And that there's a fine system where if inside the building, if you're late or something like that, you've got to make it right by paying a fine.
Yeah.
Griff, vibe check.
So, yeah, vibe check. It seems it's definitely a little bit more rigid. Not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, that's obviously you can see why there'd be benefit to that, keeping guys on their toes more. But at the same time, I don't think it's at the expense of it being a positive environment. It doesn't seem toxic, at least not yet, right? We'll see what happens if they were to go on a losing streak and what the vibes are like. I mean, the vibes are never good in any locker room, no matter what the coaching style is when you lose 4 games in a row or something like that, right?
No. Like last year with Seattle, that was pretty rough.
Right. And like the extreme of what they've described as something like Joe Judge and his players just presented him. I don't get that sense at all from Macdonald. I think he's too good of a teacher. He likes, I mean, clearly like fun is important to him still. Like he's got lightheartedness in his press conferences. He's just a dry personality. That doesn't mean he doesn't have color to him. It's just it expresses differently, externalizes differently. So he's just a different guy than Pete. The important thing above all is that he's authentic to himself. Pete was authentic to himself. Mike is authentic to himself. That's what's important. He's not projecting or compensating or puffing his chest up or whatever.
Right. And like the military base visit, it's not like they had them in boot camp going through like a commando drill. Like they're holding guns and messing around. And then they have the championship belts that I mentioned where Charles Cross and the championship belt, and he said that it's kind of fun to mix it up and spice it up throughout camp. He also described how the criteria for earning one's ever changing, and it was Chris Partridge, Jay Harbaugh who came up with it, and then the kind of criteria for earning them is yet to be fully uncovered. But the mystery scenarios were devised by Leslie Frazier and Brian Ayers of the analytics department. So, there's still some fun. And the mystery drills where the players don't know what they're going to face until he goes, "Here you go. This is what we're doing today," which they seem to like. Right now, above anything else, yeah, it's a bit more serious, a bit more, military, as Leonard Williams is saying. But ultimately, it's clear the players are bought in and they're having fun. So there you go. So Sean, are we liking the vibe from Macdonald? Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Yeah.
We'll just have to see. We'll have to see.
True that.
Right, Griff. Any other business?
No. No business.
I have a small note, right, that Marshawn Lynch is Hall of Fame eligible this year. This year's class, the 2025 class, includes quarterback Eli Manning, edge Terrell Suggs, running back Marshawn Lynch, safety Earl Thomas, corner Keith Talib, kicker Adam Vinatieri, linebacker Luke Kuechly, and guard Marshall Yonder. Griff, I think Marshawn, when he retired the first time, there was a lot of talk about how his volume wasn't there to be a Hall of Famer, despite his cult status, but that cult status might get him in. When he retired the second time, I think volume arguments had kind of died off a bit, but also he had that fun stint in Oakland, came back to Seattle. I think somehow his cult personality had become even greater. And I think now it probably helps him that he was one of the last bell cow type backs to be able to just carry a load, because it's way more impressive now, given that it's just like dead. It doesn't happen anymore, really.
Right. Yeah. I don't think he'll get on the first ballot, but I think eventually he'll get in because there'll be fewer players to compete with over time.
Yeah. I mean, they keep expanding the hall anyway, so.
Right. Yeah.
What about Earl?
I hope he gets in. That, I mean, without a doubt, like just pure football Hall of Fame career, no doubt. I just don't know how the league will.
Do you think that happens? Do you think they're like, nope?
I mean, would Earl even show up? Like, would he even give a speech? Because things are not good there in terms of.
And that is important to them. They need people to kind of buy into the Hall as an idea, right?
Right. He's got to. I don't know if Earl is well enough right now to have a media tour, which all of them get. So, like,
man, that's sad.
Yeah, it's really sad.
What downer.
I don't even know if the players, like some of the players that have made podcast appearances that were his teammate and stuff, they've referenced him, but like none of them have mentioned like speaking with him. He hasn't taken any photos with Cam or Sherm at their restaurant. Like he doesn't show up anymore. He wasn't there at the Pete's dinner. I don't think things are great there. So it might take a while for Earl to get in.
And do you know what's crazy about all of this talk of like first time eligible guys? I think arguably the best two players might not ever get in, which is Cam Chancellor and Michael Bennett.
Yeah, I don't think the league will. The league definitely won't ever get Bennett in because they'll just perceive him as a D-end who didn't have enough double-digit sacks.
Not enough sacks. So not enough sacks, and that's that. And then
with Cam, they're just going to call him a linebacker. So,
and he didn't play for long enough in their eyes. And he was where he gets completely overlooked as well. Besides his incredible versatility and ability to just dominate at multiple positions, if you like, going by like PFF charting. But also, he, by all accounts, was the guy who kept that locker room together. He was the leader. But because he's not like a scream and shout Ray Lewis type leader, that doesn't get seen either. So wow. That's a bit of a downer.
It is.
But I that can be like our campaign. Get Cam Hall of Fame recognition, I think. That should be a thing.
Yeah, there you go. Cam Hall of Fame. Get it into the ether. Just what's the saturate the search engines with Cam Chancellor Hall of Fame.
It's actually, it's so funny how his game will be perceived so badly. I think, like you saying he's a linebacker, Anyway, thank you guys for joining us. We'll be back next week with a look at the Seahawks training camp almost 3 weeks in. I'm sure there'll be Seattle news to address as well. Hopefully we get a full week of Geno Smith practice from tomorrow onwards, because he was balling out before that injury by what we've seen and heard. So fingers crossed Geno comes back and he picks up where he left off. Good news ultimately that it was just the... Seems okay, I guess. Griff, any closing wisdom?
No.
Follow Griff on Twitter at CMikeSpinMove, where there is wisdom. Follow me at Matty F. Brown. Check out SeahawksOnTape.com, where, a lot of the stuff we talked about, there's deep analytical pieces on there with film, with data, breaking down Mike Macdonald's defense, and I'll be having a look at Ryan Grubb's offense in a bit as well. Until next time. Oh, and Griff, we've got a preseason game soon, right?
Yeah, next Saturday.
Yeah, so that's actually what we'll probably be talking about. It's Saturday?
Yeah, so are we going to...
Is it actually Saturday?
I think so.
Yes! I can stay up for that. I have Sunday off.
Nice. Brilliant.
Yes.
So it's 4 p.m. Pacific.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's 12 my time, so I'll be podding at 4 a.m.
So we're potting right after.
Yeah, hell yeah. Preseason. It's
Okay.
big.
Yeah.
Guys have jobs on the line.
Yeah.
Who will win, PJ Walker or Sam Howell?
All right. Do you think we see Geno? I hope we get a report that Geno will get a drive or two.
I don't think that's going to happen.
I need one drive. One possession, please.
Do you know the sickest thing I'm looking forward to from the preseason? It's really messed up. It's Jeremy Chin with Dan Quinn. That's just messed up.
Why? What are you?
Because what if he is Cam Chancellor 2.0?
Oh. Yeah. Hey. Never know.
Who was that guy in Atlanta? He was almost it.
Yeah. Oh, I totally know him.
Yeah, Keanu Neal.
Yeah.
And then he went and
he was headed that way.
He was actually so good. And,
Yeah.
Then he wasn't. Then he went and did those films about assassins, right? Or an assassin.
I have no idea.
Yeah. All right. See you guys.
All right. Peace out.